Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss how to name ionic compounds, or in other words, we're going to discuss ionic nomenclature. The good news is, this is so much easier to do with ionic compounds than it is with covalent compounds, so hopefully we'll fly through this quite quickly. So the example I always use is NaCl. So how do you know what to call that? So what do I say when you look at that? That's basically what we're trying to figure out right now. And so our rules for naming ionic compounds are very straightforward, and there's only three. The first one is that you always name the cation first. So for our example here, our cation is definitely sodium, so we just write out the word sodium. Done, okay? Step one's done. Number two, you name the anion second. Pretty easy. All right, so our anion is chlorine, so we just write out chlorine. Number three, and this is, I guess, the hardest part out of all of it. It's pretty straightforward. Change the anion, it's definitely the anion, so make sure you're careful with that, suffix to IDE. So everything ends in IDE. So all you do is come over here, cross out INE, and it becomes chloride. So the name of NaCl is sodium chloride. Pretty easy, right? And so the big thing I want to point out here, which we didn't really have to deal with because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but in ionic compounds, there are no prefixes. Okay, so if you recall with our covalent stuff, we'd say mono this or di this. We don't do that with ionic compounds because we can automatically assume what type of anion and cation it's going to become, because sodium is always +1, chlorine is always -1. So we can assume that for ionic compounds, which is really nice. So let's do an example together. So SrCl2. So we name the cation first. Sr is strontium. Strontium. Name the anion second. So we have a chlorine. Number three, change the anion suffix to IDE. So instead of chlorine, we now have chloride. So your answer here, or what we name SrCl2, is strontium chloride. Note, it is not dichloride. It's not dichlorine. It's just chloride. We know that strontium will always have a +2 charge, so there's no need to tell anyone that there's two chlorines. A good scientist would already know that, in theory. All right, so last one we're going to do together, then I'm going to let you try one. Na3N, okay, so we have the cation first, sodium, okay, it's not trisodium, it's not trisodium, it's just sodium, okay, and then the next thing would be nitrogen. And I'm using this as an example because nitrogen is usually the one that people struggle with for some reason. And so it becomes nitride. So the O-gen goes away. So nitride. So what it becomes is sodium nitride. Some people try to say nitroided or nitrogid. They keep the G, but that's not how it goes. Nitrogen just breaks down to nitride. So Na3, you just call it sodium nitride. Very simple. Last one. This is for you. What would you name something? Al2O3. Go. All right, did you get an answer? Hopefully you did. All you had to do was follow the three-step process. So step one, name the cation, aluminum. Step two, name your anion, oxygen. Step three, change the ending. So instead of oxygen, you now have oxide. So the answer here would be aluminum oxide. So hopefully you got that. All right, so now I'm going to throw an exam question at you. What is the name of the ionic compound formed from the reaction of sulfur and calcium? Okay, so write out your equation, then decide what the charges are. Is it an anion or cation? Then put it together, determine what the ionic formula is, and then name that thing. Actually decide what the nomenclature is. Long process. You can do it. Go. All right, did you get an answer? Hopefully you did. The first thing you have to do is decide what these things are going to be. Are they anions or are they cations? So right away you should see that calcium is your metal. Calcium always has that 2+ charge. And then we can look at our sulfur. Sulfur is definitely an anion. Sulfur always has a -2 charge. And so if we do our little trick where we take our 2+, that becomes a subscript of the sulfur. The 2- becomes a subscript of the calcium. You end up with Ca2S2. You never, ever, ever write 2s and 2s or 3s and 3s. If it's the exact same number, you eliminate it and you just write like this, CAS. So the correct name of this, you name the cation first, calcium. Name the anion second, sulfur. Change the ending, sulfide. calcium sulfide. Hopefully that made sense. If not, do it again and just practice, practice, practice. It will eventually click. You just have to put the man hours in. Good luck. Take care of yourself. Drink water.